Hey, it's KR from D&D Homebrew talking today about how you can go about finding a game to play online if you choose to do that. Typically for the first time, but maybe you've tried and things have not worked out or something and you want to know why. And I say this from my own experience playing online because I started like a lot of people during the pandemic. I lived in Europe in the 2010s for most of it. Wasn't playing D&D at all, came back, started playing 5th edition, a couple game stores, and then the pandemic hit. I'd heard of Roll20. A friend of mine was playing on that because the GM that he played with had moved down to Florida. And this was typically what happened, people moving. And again, this relates to me as well as I'll talk about as one of the options here. So I went through some different systems. I played on Discord, purely theater of the mind. I played Owlbear Rodeo. I played Foundry and Fantasy Grounds. And what I discovered was, just like anything else, you have to learn how to find a group online. Because, you typically just have a group of friends that you either, old time, like when I started off, we all started playing in junior high school, college, and then that same group. There were some people that were added on that I didn't go to high school with or college over the years, but that had been the core. And then once that ended, we did this for quite some time. I just met people at a game store, and then you become friends. And then some of those games at a game store too, you sit down at a table, you start playing, and you're like, oh, I don't know about this, right? I'm not enjoying this, which is the number one thing, of course, to have fun. So, same thing online. But what I discovered playing online was what I'll talk about now. First of all, how do you find a game? And I've gone over this. I did a whole thing on the Fantasy Ground system, and I talked about there's a Fantasy Ground forum on their website where they list games. They have a Discord server, a couple that you can do. There are Reddit channels. And I'm going to put some links down here to some of those. Same thing with Foundry has a Discord channel and Reddit boards and all sorts of things to find. I'm sure Roll20 does too. So you go on there and you find some group to play, and you typically send a message. And sometimes the GM will answer your thing, and if they've still got openings, will ask you some questions. What kind of game are you looking for? And they'll list what kind. And that's the first thing. If they're saying that it's a dungeon crawl with tons of combat, and that's not your game, don't sign up for it. You're wasting your own time and the other time. So make sure the type of game that you're playing, that you want to play, is the kind they're offering. And so that gets into the game system. I'm going to just look at the typical fantasy RPG, although there are some other ones I've played that might be interesting. Because there's two things. One is a system you're familiar with. Let's say you've played fantasy RPGs. You've played D&D 5e. You want to play online. You don't want to learn a new system. Well, that's what you look for. And there's a ton of those out there. But the other option is your group is playing 5e and nobody else, they don't want to play any other system. Your GM doesn't, or you try to run it and people don't. So look for a system out there that's different. I want to play Alien RPG. I bought the rules. I'm really interested. Nobody I know wants to play it. Well, get online, find a game, start playing. Now, the thing about this is you're not familiar with the rules, right? If you want to look for a 5e game, your 5e game fell apart, people have moved away, you can't find anybody you want to play, I want to get online. Well, now you know the rules. You could, in theory, GM, although I would not recommend, when you first start off online, play in a game to see how things work, to see what it's like to be on Discord or Zoom or whatever they use to communicate, whatever they use for maps or not, if they have a software package like a Foundry or Roll20 or Fantasy Grounds, what that's like. That's a lot of stuff to take in. So I would not say don't just start GMing, right? If your group falls apart, unless unless you've played already, you played some online, whatever, but now my group fell apart. Okay, you could try that. So you're going to I want to play something that I know. But if you're going to go for, I want to play something I don't know, be as familiar as you can with the rules and tell them I've never played Alien RPG and I've never used the software. Now, so typically, groups will let you play with no experience, is what I found. Especially when I first started. Now I have experience, but they don't necessarily ask about it. Why? Because I can help you operate the software. I've played Fantasy Grounds, which many consider the most complicated one out there. And I've seen brand new players come in and you just set up their character with them offline. Again, then there's people that might not have the patience to do that. But you do have to, if you just come in the first session and say, I have no idea what to do, you're going to bog down the session for half an hour. And people might not appreciate that. So you got to be prepared for that. But again, a lot of these systems, you can download them yourself and play with them. Just set something up and it's be basic rules or whatever, but you can make a character. You can do some different things. I got some videos I've done on how to play Fantasy Grounds. I'm not as good at Foundry, but I know it a little bit. So you're getting online because I want to play 5e and I don't have a group, or I'm getting online because I want to learn a new system and my group doesn't. So you look for the appropriate thing and then you contact the GM, and then some GMs will interview you. Really, literally, I want to get on Discord or whatever and talk to you just to see what, if you're interested in their kind of game. But you're doing the same thing. You can ask them questions about how much combat is there, how much role play. So after you've had that first session and you start playing the game, if it's a game you're not familiar with, you should probably have purchased the rules and learned a little bit, Because if you're going to go in there and go, I don't know the game and I don't have the rules to consult, they're usually on. If they have a rule set in Fantasy Grounds, you can sort of look stuff up and everything, but it's not easy to do while you're trying to play the game. So again, you're going to try, let's say I'm 5e and I want to try Pathfinder, so I'm going to go and find a Pathfinder game and not have any of the rules and just start playing. Well, that may annoy people a little bit. Again, it depends. If they say in that first, you tell them that I have no rules, I've never used Fantasy Grounds, I've never used Pathfinder, and they say, oh, come on board. Well, okay, they know. But, they're going to ask you that. And they might say, well, I don't know. Maybe you should, read the rules a little bit and come back in a little while. Or get the rules. How about that, right? So I would say you need to bring some, you've got fantasy if you play 5e or you played older versions of D&D. So, I can, because Pathfinder is very similar to that. But I can play Forbidden Lands. I can play OSE, the Osric rules, because I played those years ago. Or, it's D&D. Okay. But it'd be nice for you to have those, to do a little bit of homework on this. Because again, this is everyone's experience. And the thing is, once you get used to playing online and somebody comes into the game and does that, you're going to be like, ooh, that's what I did. Maybe you'll be more sympathetic. And again, people can be sympathetic. They're looking for players, right? So you just got to be very upfront about that. The other thing is, as you start to play, give it time. Unless it is clearly there's toxicity, there's a bizarre thing, people are yelling or doing weird things or whatever. But if the game is boring, or if the game you don't understand the software that you're using or whatever, I would just say to give it time, not just to give up. Because it's different playing online. It's, in my opinion, the ideal situation is to play around a table, but again, people don't have that option a lot. I get comments all the time on my channel about, I got this idea and that idea, but I can't find a group in my area. So I'm just sort of writing these up. And I always think, well, maybe try online. And people resist, for various reasons. And it isn't as good as in person, in my opinion. But it's better than nothing, right? If you don't have any options. And I've had a great time online. I've had a campaign that ran for a year and a half I played in. And I became friends with these people, whatever. My work schedule changed because it was kind of in the middle of the day and I had a day off that I could use. It's a long story, but I had to leave and I was bummed. And every once in a while I check in on their Discord and ask them what's going on because I enjoyed the group. I would say I've had many others that I didn't enjoy so much that I left, especially when I first started. There were some weird things going on and I just didn't care for it. Not weird, just weird like... people getting screwed over, GMs who never listen to you, players who want to dominate, players who criticize other players, which to me is a huge no-no, players that want to metagame. I mean, just, everything you can imagine is there. And then I see that game, and these are all strangers to me. So I just go, I'm not gonna play that. Just say my personal life, I got a real life problem. I got work, I got home, and nobody goes, oh man, you're not gonna prioritize us. Everybody knows that things come up and there's other things that are a little more important. So you can back away. But I would say unless it's really toxic or you just can't stand the people, I would say give it some time. Because you're going to, they put a thing out there and a bunch of people, you came and said, I want to play. And they said, okay, they filled up the table and all these other people that tried to get in can't. So you've got a seat at the table. Honor that seat a little bit. Don't just quit after one session. I mean, again, unless it's so clear, And, maybe they've got some other people in reserve or something. So maybe, right, some people might argue right away you can quit because they got a few more people. But I think that you'd be surprised if you hang in there like a lot of things, right? There's the person that goes to college and they leave after 2 days. They can't take it. I always think if you'd stayed for a week or two, you might have said, "No, this is okay," right? Like everything. When I went to Poland the first day, I thought, "Oh my God," I was there without my wife in this bare apartment going, "What have I done?" And within a couple of days, I realized, I've met some people and it's okay. And I start teaching and it's fine. So I think you should give it some time, be open to other people's play styles. You may think this isn't the way I play, but you may find that it's kind of interesting. And, understand that even though it's not going to be the same, there are some advantages, right? You're not, especially with no cameras, you can go, I do not do other things. I've had situations where people playing multiple online games, like Baldur's Gate, while they're trying to run. And you can tell every time. First of all, you can see they're on there sometimes on the Discord, but also you can just tell because they're not paying attention. Don't do that. But if you need to, there's a battle going on, it's not your turn, you can run off, go to the bathroom, whatever, just say be right back in the little chats they have. You don't have to dress up. You can, if you're just playing, it's literally show up 5 minutes before, boot up your computer, and there you go. Much easier than having to go somewhere or having people over at your house. You can do a lot of cool things with VTTs in terms of tactical battles and stuff if the GM is adept at that. Really kind of interesting stuff. So again, what kind of game do you want to play? Is it something you've never played? Or is it just that you can't find a group, but you want to play in the system you're familiar with? Interview with the GM, see what kind of game they're going to play. Try to pick something that you know is at least close to what you're doing. And then, unless it's just unbelievably bad, give it some time. You got to learn the system, the VTT. You got to get used to the people. Because, as I said, I have had 2 different groups I played online with that were really, really fun. And I played with a lot more than I did not enjoy, tell you the truth. But don't forget, you're playing during the pandemic. That's all there was. So I was constantly looking for games, constantly getting on there. Once I got used to what to look for in an online game, I got better at weeding out the games that I didn't like. But I tried to play online Dungeon Crawl Classics multiple times, and the groups kept falling apart. And that's another thing that can happen, right? And I just had to go, well, I'm never going to play DCC, right? We did the funnel and then about 3 or 4 sessions, and each one of them fell apart. So that can happen, right? Not so much on a live in-person game in my experience, unless people get to a point where they want to do something else. Again, as always, a shout out to my Patreon members. So glad you guys, I love creating material for that. Check that out. There's a link down below, maybe something you guys are interested in. Love to hear your experiences on playing online. And of course, give a like and subscribe and all that. But most importantly, whether online or in person, whatever RPG game you play, keep doing it and tell somebody else about it.